Alright, so let us try that again. And bazoom, bazoom, bazoom. We are coming to you. Should be. There we go. Awesome.
Yep, it's pulled up.
Alright. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay, so, sorry for nobody that even saw that. Not that big of a deal, but I guess we'll just recap like the last few moments of what we were just talking about. Because, basically, when we just got back from Black Panther just now, and it was not terrible, but I'm trying to kind of figure out what the point of any of it really meant. Because there was a better movie that didn't take place. This seemed like it would have been fine as part of a larger series, and not even like the beginning of the series. Like, this was like the midpoint in it. Like, we missed a season or two, and it was a well enough done series. You know, so far in terms of the Disney MCU series offerings, it seemed like the best series that they could have put out so far.
Yeah.
But
it definitely had weird pacing. Like, it had more climaxes and like.
Yeah, it was. It
had climaxes like it was written for a TV show, which is a problem I find with Disney right now. Is their TV shows seem to be written to be movies, and their movies seem to be written like TV shows.
Well, the problem is they scrapbook is what they call it, right? And so it's kind of like a choose your own reality or choose your own adventure kind of way of doing it. And so they think that by doing this, they can extend or contract, the story as needed. And so that's why you constantly see all the stuff with, like, things just being expository or directives, but nobody actually just has a life or has, like, things, like, they're not actually stories. They're just, like, these series of events that play out. And, and this one actually, like, it was connected. It was coherent enough. But it was just kind of like there was a much more bigger, interesting story that didn't take place and wasn't happening, and they never got around to even addressing. And then, like, what would have been a movie has yet to come. And I'm, and it could be for like a good movie, but it was like this was a great season 3 of a series that we missed two seasons out of, it seemed, because the big problem with this was they tried to address the death of T'Challa, and and in a way they kind of did it in a way that was derisive of Chadwick Boseman in a lot of ways, and it was kind of like a little bit interesting, and I'll let you talk about that in a second, because it actually was where the feed cut off, but like this whole idea of when you look at what we've got going on the screen, I've got like these little cornerstone pictures, and when I found out that they were going to call this a death by virus, which, by the way, nobody else was concerned with, nobody else really had.
No, they weren't. They were like standing by him at his deathbed.
Right.
Like, no one was concerned about getting sick.
Right. So
like, this is weird. I know it's a hint towards COVID, and what's even funnier is they wanted to use cancer. But they had to keep continuity because in the past movies they cured cancer.
Wakanda cured cancer, but they didn't cure cancer, evidently, because cancer must have been Wakandam, But I kid, in a terrible way, though, because that's like, it would have been more respectful to just recast this guy and tell an actual story. Or at least try to make a tangible reason as to, like, have a story about
like
a story about why he died would have been interesting, because this whole thing is like if he's the only person who had this thing, was he assassinated?
That whole year that you said, the whole year would have been a good movie. Yes, I think this would have been a better movie if we didn't see Black Panther at all, and it was just Sherry and the family trying to figure out what the fuck this virus was that killed T'Challa.
Something.
Being a science thriller movie,
but even that would have been like for the first season, the connective threads of because I have no problem with Shuri becoming the Black Panther, quite honestly, and because she was a good character, she's well enough written, the person who plays her, I have no issues with either. I know a lot of people think that there's a lot of political whatever around that, but who cares? Like, that's shown itself in due course to be kind of the people who thought they were right were just that. They thought they were right. And so,
Yep.
you know, moving beyond that, though, like when you look at what this story is, and they've got that going on, where it's like I say, like if it's a virus, wouldn't more people be more concerned about, like, you know, contracting said virus? How does that happen? Like, you know, what is that all about? Because if that's not the case, then like, was he assassinated? Like what is this thing? Like, they don't really get into it, and like you said, it's because they cured cancer, but they didn't cure what was evidently cancer.
Yeah.
Or maybe even if it was something like where like vibranium exposure or some kind like there should have been something about something, or like, you know, like have him like being like, you know, a fucking hero when he dies, like just having like him die in the suit so that he doesn't even like Chadwick Boseman doesn't even have to be there to die.
Yeah,
like
they didn't even do that.
Like they didn't even allow Black Panther to die. He was just dead. He was just a guy that died off screen, and it was all they could do to like just make like you'll see in the corner too. Like I've got this death mask up because that's what this thing felt like, was a 3-hour drawn out Massengill commercial that was about like, you know, a death mask kind of sequence. And I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can actually pull this up. And I had a definition of death mask the other day that I had ready to read. See if I can find it here. Let's see. Otherwise, I'll just pull it up
while
again.
you're doing that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll talk to them about my.
Yeah, your theory.
I thought so. They talked about the virus, so they never elaborated what the virus was. And I thought would be a cool story would be if they had like the beginning scenes of T'Challa fighting someone, and it turns out the person he's fighting is zombie Spider-Man, because when Spider-Man in his movie fucked up and brought people who know who Peter Parker was and Peter Parker, they brought over not just the good Peter Parkers that we saw in the movie, they brought over zombie Peter Parker that we saw in What If.
Right. Anything that could have like connected to the multiverse or anything. Yeah. You know, like any way to like
having T'Challa fight zombie.
Yeah.
Zombie, and they could have CGI'd Chadwick Boseman as a zombie themselves
anything, but that would have been also like in a way that like I would have seen. I could see kind of their hesitance to that, because they
I can see the hesitance to that
people
too.
People would be like, we're trying to dance his zombie corpse out there on the screen, but you still did, and they did it in such a baiting fashion, because like it gets all the way through this movie, which has been decent enough, and then they go and they do their little Chadwick piece, and it was just kind of like. At that point in time, I felt nothing, and that's unfortunate, because it was just
they didn't have to do the Chadwick piece. I think introducing the child was enough. They like introducing the child kind of washed your mouth out of them doing the like pandering Chadwick piece, but they still did it.
Right, and here's the thing about it too, is like, you know, the bigger issue that's going to happen with this movie too is like all the cultural whatever that goes on around it. Because in terms of it just being a movie, it was misdirected as a movie. It was fine as just, like I say, like it seemed like it was somewhere in the middle season arc of a made-for-TV series that would lead to an eventual movie, you know. But like the stuff they had in there, though, like, you know, it was more of the same girl bossing kind of like by association. Like, we're going to tell you how to feel about these characters and this and that. And, like, there's certain stuff where, like, you know, when the concept of the MCU began before Disney owned it, the idea was that they wanted to make something that was going to be respectful to their comic book series and everything like that, where, you know, it was actually like this thing where, you know, like you were going to get the comics. And, you know, not to mix my universes here, but I'm going to pull from the Batman series, of course, to say, you know, you either live long enough, you know, like, to die the hero, you become the villain. And, you know, Chadwick did die the hero. Black Panther evidently died a hero, right? Disney, however, has lived long enough to be a villain and undermine everything that the MCU and its original directives were set out to be. But that's kind of, you know, Disney can't stop being Disney, you know, and it's kind of where we have to learn to kind of do different, do better. You know, another little interesting point to us watching the movie that we did today, because I know we were supposed to give our tickets away to, you know, any minorities that would have wanted to go, but you and I were the only people that were even in the theater.
Yes.
And they wouldn't even start the movie had we not sat down. Probably.
Yep.
Because, I mean, like, you know,
We literally had to buy tickets in order for them to start the movie. We even asked.
Right. I asked if I could pay for anything but tickets to the movie, and even pay extra. And then they go, no, we got to do that. It's like, because we were that was it. We were the only ones that were there. Like,
yep.
The zeitgeist of superheroes is waning, and it has more to do with the fact that, you know, they're not really individuals anymore. It becomes this collectivist kind of nonsense about how, like, you know, nothing really carries through. Shuri had, like, these amazing powers in one scene, and then 5 minutes later, like, you know, like, got just straight up, you know, I mean, like, she ended up, like, not being able to do certain things. Like, I thought you just unlocked your super serum powers, and, like, this whole thing is just kind of like, it's completely misdirected and incoherent in ways, but it's like a solid 85% if you don't think about it. And I think that's what they shoot for, is they're like, they want people that just come in with their emotions ready to be played to, right? Because, like,
yep.
You know, there's not background music in Disney movies. There's foreground music, and it's foreboding, and it takes over everything. There's background scenery, but it's like they're doing this whole weird kind of psyop emotional ploy on you, like, where, like, it's, you know, sight, sound, and magic, you know, is kind of like this high idea of what is a movie, right? And so, you know, because it is a collection of still images and sound, but there's also kind of, you know, they want to try to hold you in with this nostalgia, or just kind of like this whatever, and that, you know, they don't care about the characters within Disney, like owning Marvel. Like, that's why the whole thing of, like, they just sidestep the death of Black Panther like it wasn't even a big deal. Like there's all these little boys who just, you know, like, for as big of a cultural thing as Black Panther was, the way that they completely just sidelined him, fridged his ass, and shot him into space in under 5 minutes, and then just went on with their Massengill commercial for 2.5 hours.
Didn't even elaborate, didn't have him die on scene.
Right. Like, and it means absolutely fuck all. I mean, it's just like, what a giant, like, for all the black people who think that this is their cultural moment and this and that, no, your hero was fucking killed, and just, like, nobody cares. They just move on. A year happened, you know, and that's it. That's all you get. And then at the end, they go and they book in, and they're like, hold on, you know, there might actually be some like nostalgia, and this is the reason why they didn't do the second in credit scene, I'm pretty sure, is because they just did their little fucking, you know, grief baiting right there, and they figured, well, we got everybody, like, full of tears and this and that, so, like, getting them to, like,
we can't throw a Thunderbolts scene in,
right.
This was a big advertisement for Thunderbolts too, and that'll be something I get into at the end.
So definitely,
and, like, this is the most we've seen the Thunderbolt bitch.
Yeah, she was
the whole fucking series. She always only ended up in end credit scenes.
Right. This was her moment of girl bossing. She got to, like, actually get, like, you know, which, you know, I can't fully take away from, because if they're going to have her as part of the MCU, she does at some point in time have to be more than just a wisp in the wind, queefing out, like, little, like, you know, like, expository moments. So, but this in and of itself is more of that thing of just the directive of, you know, more is yet to come, and don't forget to buy these product placements that we have all around you, which, Jesus, they are just, wow. You know, I mean, you go to a Disney movie now, and it is not a movie. It is anything but telling you a story that's about a story. This was about, you know, all this other kind of stuff that was anything other than a story about Black Panther. And to the point to where in commercials now, it really does just say Wakanda Forever mostly on everything, which you're right. You know, when you're like, hey, they should just call it, yeah, they should, but they know
should have been a TV show called Wakanda Forever.
But they know Black Panther is the hook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and
that's
so, like,
the problem.
And right, and it's kind of like those subtle digs they do at people, like you had mentioned before the stream initially died.
Like at T'Challa, they were being mad at T'Challa because he didn't tell them.
Right. Then they were not even. Yeah, they were mad at T'Challa as a character, and so, like, they basically said he deserved to die and just leave it at that in a way.
Because Chadwick Boseman,
and it's
they were mad at Chadwick Boseman because he didn't tell them. No one knew he had cancer until he died of cancer.
Right. Because had they known, they wouldn't have hired him.
Yep.
And I know that sounds terrible, but you know what? Had they known, they wouldn't have hired him, because they didn't want to face what they just had to go through, and do. You know, and this is the most respectful thing they could think to do. outside of recasting and actually just continuing down the narrative. And in terms of like, trying to cover your tracks for what you're doing, which is actually just fridging and sidelining an important character within the framework of the MCU, and you're just going to try to say, yeah, but no, we can just have his sister take over and it's not that big of a deal. No, it is
she's a young Avenger.
It is that big of a fucking deal. It is fucking ginormously big. If you want to start a fucking Black Panther series by having Black Panther get killed in the first 10 minutes, and then spend a whole season trying to figure out what the fuck that's about, and then like they do this whole thing, and it takes 12 hours, at least to get to the part where we're like ready to accept Shuri and all this kind of thing, and like they've earned it, right? But that's not what this is. Like I say, this is like, and that's the thing about all these Disney things that that I've said time and time again. It's like from a distance, it's like a supernova space. We love pictures of space. They're so picturesque and beautiful. Oh, I want to live there. But you get into space, and you know what? It takes your breath away, literally, and you die in the vacuum because you can't. It's not actually inhabitable, and that's the thing about these Disney kind of narratives they put out, is I don't feel that they're actually legitimately inhabitable. They exist, but they're like, well, like I say, it's the definition of a death mask. This was a definition of a death mask from Wikipedia says, death mask is a likeness of a person's face after their death, usually made by taking care of an impression from the corpse. Death masks may be members of the dead or be used for the creation of portraits. And that's what this was. This was a death mask that took 3 hours, right? And rather than actually just like celebrating the life of Black Panther, which was the legacy that Chadwick Boseman was trying to leave behind, and why you would recast him, why he was trying to just like keep his thing going and die with dignity, and like allow the, if you want to keep Chadwick Boseman in the comic books as Black Panther for time and eternity, and do that little kind of memorial to him, awesome, I'm all for that.
I agree with that too.
But you don't just go and throw away like a cultural touchstone, history making supposedly hero that you put out less than a decade ago, and just not even really make mention of him in any direct means, for the majority of 2.5, nearly 3 hours of a playthrough of Disney content. It was ludicrous in terms of how much it was just kind of like, all right, this is grief baiting. You want everybody here to come in and like, and it's like, you're actors, like, and I understand he was your friend too, but like, you just go and then say, and a year happened, and then life goes on. And so it's like, you're not, so you yourselves are removed from things, and then another character in the movie ends up dying, and then they have, so they have 2 funerals, and you're right back to like...
Yeah, and it devalues his funeral so much, because it literally is a repeat of the same scene almost.
Right, and it's just like, it's completely like, alright, so he's not even good enough to have the standout.
And they didn't, and we were making a joke about the Mufasa thing, Lion King.
Yeah,
and we were like, oh, they have to do it with T'Challa. No, they Mufasa'd Mom.
Yeah, Mufasa came out instead of, Chakfasa, like, it was, and even Killmonger got us, like, and so,
yeah.
But that was kind of also playing to this idea of, like, they're not really creating heroes, and I'm not totally, and Shuri, she can be a conflicted character, she can have a lot of rage, and just,
yes.
I got that too, nothing wrong with that, but, like, and I guess maybe they're trying to, like, do the balance of, like, oh, well, she's not going to, like, become a world burner. She's going to go out and, like, try to still pursue who she is and not, and so, like...
And I hope they do that with her so they can do the Young Avengers. So I hope all they did was change her mantle. Literally, instead of her being White Panther and doing Young Avengers, she's Black Panther doing Young Avengers. And don't change her story outside that. Let Wakanda run itself, really, right now. They have the gorilla guy running as ruler right now, it seems like. Yeah. And just let her do the Young Avengers storyline with Ironheart and Spider-Man and Tony's kid and Ant-Man's kid. Like, there's the Young Avengers being built.
Right.
And she's supposed to be part of them. if they follow the comic books. But I don't know if they're gonna put her in it like they should.
Right. Yeah, no, it's all a big question mark at this point because, like I said, I can't remember if this was on the stream that quickly died, but or I'm just retouching it. But that whole idea of like like they've lived long enough to become the villain, and they undermine the very property that they, because like Disney just owns this shit. To them it's just shit that it's more content. They feel the same way about this that they feel about Star Wars, to the point that they actually want to merge them together in the multiverse, and they've already hinted at that they are connected. And with what they want to do with ultimately trying to get Star Wars possibly out of the rut that they put it in, that's how they're going to try to fix that too, with a multiverse. And it's what though, the multiverse is kind of not necessarily the thing that effed the MCU entirely. No, it was the people that are at Disney. They have been making tween-age girl properties since the mid to late 90s, and that's become their whole MO. Like I grew
The only one that made sense them doing that with in these new TV shows was Miss Marvel.
Yeah. And
that I understand. That was fine with it being a teeny bop show.
I don't deride that because it is what it is. It's just a show for teenage girls, and I'm not gonna sit here and hate on a thing that was obvious. It was inconsequential, and that's kind of this thing too. For as much as they want to sit here and say they cared about Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther as a character, all this kind of stuff. No, if you did, you would have just recast the guy and allowed him to continue on having adventures and having stories, but that's not what this is about, and I mean, because it was either going to be this or he was going to still be flanked by 3 women. They had, and I mean, every scene had at least 3 women in it.
And those same 3 women always, they're just now in the forefront.
Right.
The same 3 women.
Right.
Which is fine. Someone had to take his place, so
it
makes sense that one man is replaced by 3 women.
But it's not fine because in the lead up to this movie, they had an Ant-Man and Woman Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Sorry, Ant-Man and the Woman.
Oh, do you mean the Ant family?
Yes. The Ints were out and about and I don't even know if Paul Rudd said more than 2 words in his own commercial for his it's okay. All right, men exist, but they're just underlings to women and all this kind of stuff, and it's
Well, they really can do whatever they want with Ant-Man because the Ant-Man they're using isn't even the comic book Ant-Man.
Sure. I mean, none of this
his father-in-law is the comic book abusive asshole.
Sure, but I mean, at this point in time, though, they're just kind of doing whatever they want regardless, because what they want to do is have. They want to have this empowerment kind of thing about just saying that, and it's not just them. There is a directive going around globally for media propagandist networks to do this, ideological representative diversity training, right? And it's ESG kind of, stuff where it's they want to, it's the ends justify the means, and we're going to get it there to where, people are put into positions because we care more. And it's yeah, but your position of caring is in and of itself a conceit to the very thing that you're supposedly combating. Because when you sit here saying that we're doing anti-racist measures by making things racist, by design, just with fancier wording and labeling behind it, you're destroying the humanity of the world. This whole thing, what it leads to ultimately, and we'll get into more particulars in the movie in just a second, but it's just kind of but this is Disney's, it's a kind of magic. They're the Magic Kingdom, and they have their touchstones, and they do all this kind of stuff, and a lot of people get confused about seduction. They think it's all this sexiness, and it's no, seduction is boring, mundane. Seduction doesn't want you to pay attention to the magician. It wants you to pay attention to the woman in the red dress. That's part of seduction. But the bigger part of seduction is the stuff that you're not paying attention to, and that's been Disney and this lobbyist corporatist agenda by, extension, for 40 years now. And if we don't do something about, taking back our entertainment or deriding this stuff for what it is, and actually getting it back to where it's like stories can just be about stories and be about characters, and it can be a movie about a movie, and not just, a Massengill commercial for 2.5 hours where I'm supposed to get in touch with my feelings and, be aggrieved. And it's like, I didn't know Chadwick Boseman. He seemed like a decent enough guy. But,
I understand why he didn't tell them he had cancer.
Right. It's his privacy. It's his right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and if he dies, then you go and you recast him, and, you just go on and, continue doing the movie. But for you to sit there and say, no, you've got all your grief, and we're trying to process your grief as an audience, and that grief processing, you're literally saying, and 1 year later, after, what was a nonsense.
Like I said, that was the thing that bothered me the most. That's what I'm saying about,
that's what I mean by, the way that they go and they say things in such a duplicitous manner. The movie in and of itself was innocuous. It was just kind of and that's kind of in and of itself kind of conceit. It's not even, it's just, it's there. It's not a bad movie. It's not a good movie.
No.
It's not a great movie. Most definitely not a great movie.
It would have been a better TV show.
It was fine. Yeah, it would have been fine as just somewhere in the midst of a TV series that's just kind of it's there,
TV series called Wakanda Forever, and then run back with Black Panther 2 as her already being the Black Panther.
Right. And she could have earned it through the series, because it's those underlying little digs that you're talking about too, the jab at Chadwick Boseman subtly. When the logo for Hawkeye is in lowercase letters.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, capital letters everywhere. Let's emphasize this. Let's do this and that. Hawkeye. No, make that lowercase. He hasn't been, cucked enough in various ways. Let's go ahead and, even, the series that has his name on it, we're not even going to capitalize the H in Hawkeye. When you used to
followed her comic book.
I understand, and that's what I'm saying, Dylan, is...
I know. That's why I was pointing it out, so people had context.
I mean, that's the thing that it's he had a giant fucking H on his chest and on his head for years.
Yeah, he had his own font and everything for his comic book series.
Right.
And she had a different one, and they used hers.
Exactly. And that's where it was kind of those subtle digs where it's it wasn't about him. It was about her.
You know what's funny? He's the highest paid actor that Marvel has, too. He overtook Tony Stark, that's
because he's one of the...
Robert Downey Jr. Not by per movie. It's because he's been in the most movies.
Right. Endurance.
Mm-hmm.
But, he's pretty much been effectively sidelined now. And,
I mean, when the Young Avengers come out, she's going to be hard replacing him.
Yeah, and Thor, even if he sticks around, I don't give two shits. He's turned himself into a farce of a character.
I don't even understand Thor anymore.
Thor doesn't understand Thor. Thor hasn't been Thor in 2 consecutive movies, and he hasn't. He's a different guy who answers the Thor every time he shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just at a certain point in time, it's just dude, you can't even. You're not even You're just scenery. You're just pretty scenery.
Back on Panther, So in the first beginning of the movie, they had the funeral, and then they went on to their thing. To the 1 year later, and Mom is flexing and being a tyrant.
Oh yeah, she kind of went the black pill route pretty quick about I hate every...
Yeah.
She spent a year in her room.
Fuck the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then...
referring to herself as the most powerful thing. Yes. Yeah.
Sherry, for that whole year, was trying to figure out the virus that killed him. So she's the one person that was actually...
Right. She was the rest of the audience.
What should have been going on.
Right.
The virus that killed him, trying to recreate the flower that Killmonger destroyed.
Right. There's a whole more interesting movie that is just Shuri, and that's what I'm saying. She's not a bad character. And in terms of all the girl bosses they've had, she's not really even a girl boss. In terms of... No,
she's fucking... And I don't hate her being Black Panther either.
No! This is the one time where they could have just actually, dealt with a thing. And just dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
And by dealing with it, you had, the Disney series stuff set up. And this would have been the perfect time to say, all right, so let's take that idea of, yes, we will still make Black Panther 2, but we're going to make Black Panther 2 when we've earned it and we've actually dealt with this situation appropriately.
Yep. Right now is Wakanda Forever. We'll finish this, and then she will get her Wakanda 2. Because, like, this is like us saying, okay, so if they would have slapped Captain America 4 onto that Falcon and Winter Soldier show, this is equivalent.
Right.
This is literally equivalent.
Right.
She got the suit at the end. Like, he got the Captain America suit. Like, he earned that suit, and he's getting his own movie.
Sure. I mean...
And I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and not to say that thing's perfect, but there was an attempt there to at least kind of try to justify a bitter pill to swallow for the audience. And but this, again, and that was something that was narrative-based. This was something that was literally like a holy fuck kind of, and if you need to... And
we have to do something.
Right, and people were like, we're going to give you time, we're going to do your thing. And it seemed like you took that, you squandered it, and then you did this whole other movie about, like, just, like, grief and trauma, because that's been the... that's, Dylan, the big bad of Stage 4, right, Phase 4, is grief and trauma and inner turmoil.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's the COVID
No,
phase.
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't even make money.
I mean, it makes sense why they're doing it.
No,
Yeah.
it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
It's neurotic is what it is. All right? It's neurotic fucking reasoning. It is some kind of weird misandrist fucking power play that thinks that somehow, because I feel these things, it somehow, doesn't actually touch upon the things that it actually creates or makes from it. But my feelings are so important. Don't focus on any of the stuff that happens because of my feelings. And because it's like, because they're feeling about, like, like whatever they needed to do to aggrieve themselves of Chadwick Boseman, like, wanting privacy, for fuck's sake. He wasn't honest.
He didn't want to get fired.
Yeah. God forbid he wanted to leave behind a lasting fucking legacy of a kick-ass fucking character that could stand the test of time. And what'd you fucking immediately do as soon as you got not even 2 minutes on the screen? Nah, he's dead, man. Don't worry. Just bring his mask out.
Chadwick Boseman didn't play. It was not on the screen at all.
No.
He was in, like, they cut to old movies.
Right.
But nothing of, like, new stuff. Even if they would have let Paul Walker and CGI'd in.
Anything, just for half a second, yeah. Or even, just even having him in a goddamn suit as Black Panther to be there and die as a fucking man. But no. Nope.
They wanted to kill him with a virus.
They killed him how they wanted to kill him, off screen. And without any fanfare.
With some mystery COVID.
And then they, like, it's something that's vaguely like COVID, but not COVID. But also vaguely like cancer, but not cancer. Like, it was such a fucking, like, non-committal to even, like, it's like, and he's dead. Can we move on? And, like, it's like, no, we're here to, like, hey, guys, Shuri's a fun character. She's great. It's like, yeah, no, I'm cool, and we can go along with that. I'm ready to do that in, like, 2 years. 2 years. Because for you, I know it's been, like, years, like, it's been a number of years since he's died, right? But you don't even care about any of this fucking logistics of any of this stuff anymore. It's obvious now. It is beyond obvious. Because it's like, none of these movies even have the interconnection that they used to have. What is this 1 year of time? When the fuck did that happen? What about the blink? What does any of this mean anymore? None of this stuff, like, for as much as they sit here and say, it's all
even
interconnected.
Smarter.
Bullshit. It's bullshit.
Even smarter, they could have easily just been like, he didn't blimp back. Or something like that. I know he blimped back in Endgame, but they could just had a simple thing where he faded away or something happened to him.
Anything would have been more interesting.
That wasn't
anything
that wasn't just a virus because they cured. And they wanted to use cancer because they were hinting that they wanted to use, like, his actual cause of death. But like I said, continuity-wise, they cured cancer in Wakanda,
right?
So he couldn't have cancer.
Even though
they could have gone. What would have been funny? They could have gone.
Yes. What cancer?
Jane Foster.
Right. The
exposure
route. Right.
Where
the
Hammer kept purging the poisons that were basically curing her out of her body.
Right. And so like and so like what are we saying?
Because every time
like,
she picked up the hammer, it would purge.
Right. And
it would purge all of the chemo out.
Right. And so Millionaire, you know, it was killing her in the sense that it was like trying to it's just like. And so what are we to say? Like did he have
the flower wouldn't let him take chemo? Is like that? That's how I would say.
I mean, that's lame, but yeah, I mean, at least that's something, you know. But it's like, all right, because you did this, you now no longer have the cure. Because you're Black Panther, like you have all this power, but you also have like, I mean, but that's the thing though. It's like there's an inconsistency, and like they're effectively made their own super soldier, but it was, you know, like, well, ours is, you know, locally sourced, farm fresh, direct, organic, you know, it's. You know,
would have been funny is if she actually did use in the super soldier serum instead of the Black Panther one.
It's like heirloom tomatoes, you know. It's like, you know, like they have the heirloom tomato version of, you know, like whereas super soldier is your GMO, you know, super fucking tomato that's like, you know, like and
yeah.
And hey, they both exist.
Wakanda-based. It's not grown in Wakanda-based soils.
But I tell you what, I'm far more impressed with an organic heirloom tomato that's as big as my fist than I am, you know, a GMO tomato that's as big as two of my fists, because that heirloom tomato is concentrated and densely packed and still giant and fucking huge. The other one gets to be too overblown and kind of bland, which does bear on what we're talking about here, because that is the MCU, is it's lost sight of what these stories are for, right? Because for them, like, these stories, it's kind of like when I rail on, like, you know, when people talk about the quality of wrestling, and I'm like, well, wrestling doesn't care about you buying it. It's already paid for, you know. NBC is the customer in that situation, right?
Yep.
And for
They just want their agenda pushed.
And for Disney right now, their business partners are like AT&T and, you know, like other, obviously Apple from the movie.
Yeah, Apple was pushed
everywhere.
Apple Computer did something that in the movie that Apple Computer can't do in real life.
Yeah, I mean yeah, like it was being used as the central processing core of like all this stuff. And it's like, no, man, you'd need Linux for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's totally like a custom wear job right there. You're not just gonna, like, you know, plug in like your latest iMac and like, yeah, that shit just works, man. No, I'm sorry everybody, but, you know, like, for people that are in art school or want to do simple things, just go online. Yeah, Mac will do that for you. It'll do things, but it's not gonna, like, you know, do like all this other stuff that like they're talking about. Oh, it's like, that's not what they're designed for. They're designed to look pretty and be easily accessible, not run fusion cores.
And like we said, this show, I keep calling it a show because I want it to be a show.
It is. No.
Show.
Just call it a show, because it is a show. It was misplaced on the theater's screen, and that's the problem. Because that's really and because it's like I just don't feel anything. You know, I can't feel anything about it, because it's just like, all right, well, like,
it felt like it wasn't. So it had too much for a movie, but too little for a TV show was the problem. But like I said, they had so many climaxes
and so that's kind of where they're like, well, what do we do with this? Like, you make a mini series then. You know?
Make Wakanda Forever a show, and then do in a year Black Panther, because I mean, they're doing the Christmas special for Guardians of the Galaxy, and then number 3's coming out in May.
Right, and here's the thing too that Disney now has to face. Shedpool has destroyed the entirety of the MCU. It doesn't function anymore.
And they've already pushed back almost all their movies because of that too.
Doesn't
so
function.
Much so they're bringing back Spider-Man 5 years early
because
just to unfuck it.
Shedpool knows that she's a character in the MCU. She knows that T'Challa is a fictional character in the MCU. So, you know, this whole thing is kind of rendered fucking pointless now because of that thing that happened. And hopefully a lot of people just are like, nah, I don't pay attention to them. They want me to pay attention too much. I'm just going to go to the movies to see the movies. And maybe that's why they didn't do this one as a series, is because they, but that's the thing though. It's just like
they're trying to capitalize on the Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman.
Right.
They were guilt baiting.
Oh yeah, and I mean this is such grief.
But they could have got the views on a good show on Disney Plus if they would have just did that instead. Like it was better placed to be a Disney Plus either 2-part movie or
not even
like
a movie,
a
not even no
TV show.
This needed to be the 3rd season in a larger storyline. Like season 1 opens, Chactal is doing his thing as Black Panther, gets fucking waxed. You make a series about that, an entire 1st season. Let's get to that. And in that, you're building up, like, your characters that are being affected directly. We see them affected by his death. Not just a year of time passed, and then all of a sudden now they're just grafted with these kind of traits. Because,
Yeah, because we had to deal with a pissy mom who lost her son. Yes, I understand, and her husband.
But she didn't earn it, though. She didn't earn it. That's what I'm talking about. It's like...
And she was a tyrant.
Right. She just became this bit, like, in the first movie, I love the Queen. I love all the characters are decent enough. It's good enough. But in this, she's like not even the same character. But you could say, well, that she's dealing with her grief. Yeah,
she was not T'Challa's caring mother.
Right. But that's the whole thing. Is just all this stuff was just duplicitous. It was just such an empty vessel of just not even being the thing that they're pretending that it is, and it's never going to be, because their whole directive at the end of the day is still to get across this weird ass woke agenda that is about saying that diversity and all this other stuff is so much more important than giving respect to what any of this actually was about, which I mean, I guess in their eyes though too, they hire these actors for money. Well,
it's like even the bad guy wasn't the bad guy in this movie.
No.
The bad guy was a better guy than
the mom.
Shuri. The mom and Shuri, because Shuri became Killmonger there for a second.
She totally did.
And she embraced it.
Mm-hmm.
She embraced it. When she took a helmet, she took the death mask, she took Killmonger's death mask.
Right.
She didn't take her father's.
Right.
She didn't take T'Challa's, she took Killmonger's.
Right.
And her suit looks like a cross between her brother's and Killmonger's.
Right. But that's to, show to some
And
degree
he's the one that showed his face to her when she went and saw the ancestors.
Right.
It was Killmonger that said hi.
Right. And so, that's the thing, is, this movie is at odds with itself in so many ways. And it's not even terribly put together. It doesn't have its place.
Pacing was just weird.
It just
doesn't have its place, and its pacing was weird.
Right. And it's just like, I don't know about, and it's like, well, maybe that's what they're trying to say. It's like, but that's like the way that death is. It sneaks up on you, just kind of like
It's inconvenient.
Yeah, you know what? That's great and all, but guess what? These are fucking superheroes. At a certain point in time, Superman's dad dying of a heart attack and him not being able to save him, yeah, that works. Because, a superhero can't save everyone, right? Right? Nope. And so, to deal with that,
and that's usually the downfall
turmoil. But
and because a superhero can't save... So what the biggest grief is the superhero's too busy saving everybody else, they can't save the ones they love.
Right.
That is usually what superheroes fall into. Spider-Man had it. Superman had it during Smallville. I mean, they've had it left and right.
Right.
On most things.
But, I guess that's what they're trying to say, though, is that, nobody could save Black Panther because everybody looked to him for their safety.
And that was the jab. He was suffering silently before he said anything.
Yeah. Which is exactly who he is, knowing who his sister was, that he would have not said anything to her of all people. Damn near, basically was considered to be the smartest person on the planet at the time. Aside from Tony Stark, and then he died, and so I guess that kind of went to her. Mm-hmm. But she even kind of got her little moment of like, no. Riri here is also you're better.
That was another thing. They went to MIT, and Spidey's friends go there, and we didn't even see them having lunch or something.
Right.
We didn't see them in the back.
Right.
They physically went to MIT.
Right. But then again,
even Flash Thompson would have been fine.
Anything.
I would have been fine with just anything from. I mean, show the universe exists in the same place.
Right, because that was supposed to be the whole point of these things, right? But then when you actually have contextual things that would actually contextually make sense, no, dog, no, not going to do that. I need everything to be convoluted and just completely conceited as hell. And, completely just undermining all of your cognitive triggers on what makes sense, because I want you to be completely in a state of disorder, so that I can just wash. That's what this is. This is corpo-fascism just trying to break our minds. I'm at this point in time, that's what it has to be. For as long as this stuff's been going on, the way that it's been filtering through all these weird propagandist networks that are just doing their weird lifestyle branding on, what are essentially just what they call them IPs, intellectual properties now. They didn't used to be called that.
Yeah.
They used to be called my fucking memories. The things I cared about, But, and that's the problem is, if we just allow, everything in this world does have a life cycle to it. Even Disney. And maybe that's the thing, is that we've been dealing with these zombie fucking properties, or these zombie corporations that have been kept alive artificially by means of money, through various forms of lobbying or other kind of weird propagandist network synergy agreements. The thing I was talking about, how they don't care whether we, buy, a ticket to, not necessarily a ticket. If you buy a ticket to a wrestling show, they'll enjoy that because they get gate money on that. But they don't care whether or not you watch their premium live events now, because they already got paid before you even watch it, because that's part of, the premium live event bought this
and
property.
People don't realize wrestlers get paid less because of that too.
Right. And all these things have
the main event used to get something for that.
Right, and that's the thing with all this stuff, is about promising you more, giving you less, and nickeling and diming you the entire way through, and then you end up having a streaming service like Netflix. The whole idea that Netflix even got big on was that I didn't have to pay for commercials, and I was able to have this wide access to wide network library that went beyond any one thing, right? And now they're talking about how they're going to have to do, ads.
They've been crippled to the point where they have to do ads
with payment. Yep. Plus, so it's all right.
And there's no free version either.
Right, so we're just right back to cable, but now it's cable that sits there and watches you.
I
and
can
pays attention
understand
to
a
everything
free version with ads. I'm all for a free version with ads.
Sure.
But they saw what NBC had been doing with Peacock, and because Peacock has been doing their $6 service
Premium.
has ads in it.
Yeah. And that's
that's the problem. Like I said, I'm okay. Netflix is being crippled by all these fucking, because the idea of Netflix was a one-stop shop for everything, and then everybody wanted to go and take a piece of Netflix instead of working with Netflix. Which, I mean, if you're successful,
right.
They were unfortunately too successful.
There's enough.
And
there's enough to go around, except when greed is involved. Because when greed's involved, anything going to anyone else is too much going around. And that's the problem with a greedy world. And it's kind of like I say, the biggest issues that we have here is the most selfish thing you can do is be a little bit selfless, because you can't ensure the things you want if you try to hoard everything you have, right? And by that I simply mean the things that you like in this world are things you like. And if you want to make sure that you have the things that you like, you have to make sure that other people have things that they like too, right? But this idea that we're going to go and bland everything down into these simple, rudimentary kind of perfect versions that anybody can just walk up to and it's just there. No, all you've done is made everything fucking completely tasteless. And
this movie fell to the same trope Batman did. The new Batman movie was good. But the last 30 minutes was bullshit of the weird action movie bullshit. This movie did the same thing. We went a whole movie where it was okay, I could dig this. This is decent. This is this is the pacing's a little weird, but I get it. I can dig this. And then the fight scene at the end, where just the good guys just mollywop everybody.
It was, like I said, it was like this 2.5 hour. It was like, well, I guess it was more 2 hours of Massengill commercial, right? And Mephelians and Matorment, and then it was half an hour of just kind of like, you know, spectacle, blah, you know, that was kind of derivative and drivel and like. But that's the thing, and all of it now is so just paint by numbers that I think I've, you know, in some ways I've been more amped about just kind of like, and it's not even about this movie. Like this movie is just kind of like it's there, you know. Like again, like I'm more annoyed with like the ludicrous way in which Disney operates and what they do in the name of like, you know, sitting here and trying to like, you know, it's like when they put out their Kenobi series, right? And they went and they said and they even kind of did it with this initially too, because they try to go and say they have like their little shill networks go and say things like, well, if you're against this movie, you're an ist or a phobe or this or that, right? And you know, and like there's that whole brigade of like, well, you just need to go and give your tickets to minorities so they can go to it. They didn't want to go. There was nobody there who was clamoring to get into the theater. You know, it was just, it's like,
yeah, we were the only ones literally in the theater.
Yeah, so you know, we were being allies. Woo. All right, as to the best of our ability. Although I didn't want to pay for it, as I said earlier. You know, like I tried to. Isn't there like, well, you got to pay for it because you're the only people here that are even talking about watching this thing. So you know, like.
And in order to turn them on, it had to be paid for.
Right. I had to justify. You know, like so that was my part.
Because we showed up even like we walked in the theater late. And the movie still hadn't been started playing yet.
Yeah, we like it was supposed to start like at 3:30. At 3:30. And we left and got there after 3:30, and we sat there for another 10-15 minutes while they were waiting for anybody else to show up. Anybody. Like the 3:30 start time.
And you know what? I do like these early premieres. I always go to them when they have them like this for pretty much anything. Because, I mean, we can do things like this. Like, most of you guys are probably going to watch this.
Most people are probably watching it right now, even if they are. You know, yeah.
They'll be watching it late tonight if they do watch it.
Right. Or they're planning
after
to
they've
go to
seen
it right
the movie.
Now, and you know, and that's kind of where most people are at with it right now. Is like we are lucky in a sense in that, you know, the nowhere area that we're at. You know, like there's not much demand for midday movie watching. You know, so
yeah.
We kind of lucked out in that regard, but also it's not like any, you know, it's just movies are kind of a dying art, you know. They're a functional business model, but it's a dying art, you know. Like it's kind of like this whole thing about, you know, like science in and of itself is a form of religion if you only focus on the scientific evidence and not the actual like application of science itself, which is asking questions. Kind of like religion itself is not faith, you know, because faith would be, anyway, I don't want to get too much into that, but the point being, like, you know, this thing is just kind of, you know, it's so disjointed and not even meant to be what it is, you know. Like it was meant to be a sequel to Black Panther, but it was instead we're sorry, we can't give you a sequel to Black Panther. And it's like, fine, if you can't give me a sequel to Black Panther, just do that as a show. This is so straightforward.
Yep, give me Wakanda Forever as a show, and it would have sold.
Yeah,
they would have like people would have subscribed to, like I would have even thought, like, I'm not telling you guys, like, this movie I would say is better than the Disney movies as of late. So like, feel free if you want to watch the movie in theater, go watch it.
But it's
100%. If you want to experience in theater, this is one I will definitely tell you, go ahead and watch it.
I won't tell you that.
If it was like Thor,
I mean, I'll say it's probably the best offering they've had of the phase for offering movies in, you know, that have gotten increasingly worse. This one was at least kind of a rebound in that sense, but it's that whole thing about just because it exists and takes up time doesn't mean that it's actually an answer, you know. And by that, you know, it's like, it's like if I go and ask you something and you just go and talk about anything else for 2-3 minutes and then it's like, oh, that's my time. Like you effectively did fill the time. You were entertaining, I suppose, what you're doing, but like you avoided the whole point of the whole anything, and that's like
you came to
if you're gonna go to this
Black Panther movie.
If you're gonna go to this movie to go see Black Panther, then that's not what you're gonna see, and so that I cannot recommend a movie that is not about Black Panther that purports to be about Black Panther, because it's not about the death of Black Panther. It's about Black Panther getting sidelined for 2 hours. All these other people just just circle jerking around the fucking point that we all know that eventually this girl, when she gets past her grief, she's gonna take up the mantle, which they even call it the mantle. I made this meme at one point in time that people told me it was a little bit too much. It was taken from the Endgame movie with all the women in that one scene, their little A4 scene, and I just was like, we come for them mantles, and it's like, because that's the beginning of it. Like it's not enough to have their own movie of women, and I'm not even against the A-Force. If you're willing to understand that it's probably going to be like lower stakes kind of whatever movie in terms of what to expect out of what people's demand for that would be, go ahead and make that movie. I'm not going to stop you. But to sit here and try to go and say, all right, well, we'll just go and we'll put women into every single role of every character that's existed before, and that's how we're going to get you to accept it. No, that's how you're going to get me to say you don't care about these characters, and to you this is just dollar signs, and because of that you're actually the villain, and these goddamn superheroes are the fucking villains because they're goddamn just being it's the whole thing about like my grotesque little pictures in the corners of the trailer reel. Like, I think that there is something grotesque about dancing the corpse of Chadwick Boseman out for money. I do, right? But that is in some ways more honest and straightforward than what they did here.
But also, like, the villain was not a villain in this movie. He was just a king protecting his people that have been hidden for hundreds of years, because they're Mayans that took this flower. They're basically all were T'Challa's, basically, because they had flour enriched with vibranium.
They were the Avatar. They were Na'vi.
Yes, they were Na'vi.
Like, to the point that
this was Wakanda Forever, way of the fucking water.
Yeah, like I mean, it was just. And Namor wasn't Namor.
In that,
he was
Namor was not a villain.
Well, he wasn't Namor. He was Kukulkan. Namor was something
he was this. He was the dragon with the feathered wings on his head.
Oh God! And when he did the thing, how much you commented on my reactions to the movie while we were, and some of them were just like my natural responses, like my for fuck's sakes moments, and like, or just when I couldn't stop laughing when he came swimming out of the water with his fucking flight ankles, and I'm just, oh God.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck, Hermes?
Right, the little fucking bat wings on his ankles, and I'm just like, dude, like, how does this even work? Like, there's this thing called lift dynamics, and like, like, you're like, obviously like a 200-pound dude.
Oh, did you hear he mentioned that he's a mutant, even among his own people?
Oh, yeah, of course, because, but that's...
So they're laying the lines and the threads of mutants.
Right. But and that's kind of the thing that we would all probably be well to accept here, is that Kevin Feige's not even Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige's an actor himself. That's why he's a character in MCU. He's a robot named Kevin, right? Ha 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 ha. Victoria Alonso is the Kathy Kennedy of Marvel. She's the one who's doing all this shit in many ways. I'm not to say like Kevin Feige doesn't answer for it, because he's the guy who's like, but he's there in name only at this point, obviously.
Well, it's quite literally like, so not to get back into Star Wars, but we get in Star Wars, George Lucas selling his property. He did it 2 other times so he can get his final 3 movies made. That was his deal. And then Kathleen, of course, did the Nick Khan thing and helped shepherd the deal, because she had a backdoor deal, it seemed like, with Disney, where they're like, no, I know we told George Lucas he'll be CEO. He will be CEO for like a week, but we're going to fire him and put you in place.
Right.
And that's pretty much what they did, and now we have this weird BS we have for Star Wars, but we will talk about that when we talk about a Star Wars property when they come back up, because we're not reviewing Andor.
No, the appropriate name is Bland Bore. Nobody gives a shit. And that's where the MCU is headed. Nobody's going to give a shit. Like, this was the capstone in not giving a fuck. In terms of, like, they told the audience, you don't have to care about this. We don't care about this. Why do you care about fucking Black Panther? Why? We don't even spend 5 minutes on him.
Mm-hmm.
Even his mask doesn't even get 5 minutes of fucking time.
Nope.
Killmonger is more substantially important to the growth of Shuri as a character than her brother is. Right?
Which is upsetting.
I know, and that's what I'm saying about this whole thing. It's like, even like, you know, and that's what I mean by, like, when they sit here and, like, they say they do these things, you know, like when they hired, when they put Reva in Kenobi, to get back to what I was trying to say with that. They did this whole thing where they said, if you go against, you know, Reva, that means that it's like, you know, like, you're all these terrible things, right? But when she was getting propped up, when that series was coming out, she talked about how her hair was an important part of the character, and this and that. It's like, no, it's not an important part of the character. That's just something that exists in modern fashion, and you weren't willing to cut your hair to take a job to exist in Star Wars, and so now Star Wars just has to, like, you know, be more of just like this wrapping to modern day bullshit. And she was also
was the one thing that bothered me about Obi-Wan, about her character, is she's making that universe pay
the one thing
for, well, one of them, but she was making that universe pay for there was another one of those black
but they're doing the same thing with Shuri.
That whole universe had to pay for it, and I was like, that universe didn't have this problem.
But she's beta testing the Shuri model, though. She got stabbed in the chest twice, right? So Shuri's only been stabbed once so far, right? But like, even that, it's just, I don't know. It's like, I've got a tempest within me. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, every woman's got fucking problems. Guess what? Guys got some problems too. Like, we're all like full of fucking like rage monster, whatever. We've all, you know, and maybe that's be the thing that we could all just actually take the time to learn, is that we're all fucking human, and we're not like these isolationist individual representation idioms of fucking groupings. We're just people, for fuck's sakes. You know? Like, when you lose someone, it doesn't matter what race you are. It fucking sucks.
Yeah.
You know?
We have that in our own lives.
I mean,
we've lost the same person to someone in our family, and they want to take it and act like it's way worse for them than it is for us.
Right, and once again,
like, we lost the same person.
Right, and it's like this isn't a gender thing, and it's not even like a close connection thing, because it's like, you know, I understand, you know, we all got to grieve, and we all have to deal with things, you know, but time and place, right? And if you're going to sit here and try to make a movie about grieving a guy who doesn't even die on the screen, and doesn't even like have, like, it's like, what are you trying to do? You're not satisfying anything for anyone. You're not paying respect to the character. You're not paying respect to the actor. You know, like, none of this is actually doing anything other than creating a defense wall for deflection, and trying to set it up so that you can't sit here and say, this is a profiteering scheme. That's why this stuff exists in the way that it does. And that's why I'm trying to make the connection to the whole thing with Reva on, you know, when they said, you know, they quite literally put up the dark, you know, like, I know it was a joke back in South Park 20 years ago, but Operation, you know, Send Out the Darkies, or like, you know, like, let's go ahead and put up a wall barrier of precious gems and minorities that if anybody says anything about, we can sit here and say, you're a terrible racist, this and that. You know, go ahead and look at my history, you know? I'm a pasty ass pale, like, blonde hair, blue eyed son of a bitch that most people think is like an Aryan dreams, like an Aryan wet dream.
An Aryan's wet dream, yeah.
Come to life, and and but I'm actually a person who's got a native background, like primarily, but I'm just like really fucking pale. But that wouldn't matter to most people, In these modern times, I'm just some white guy, and and it's kind of ludicrous though too in some ways, but even still, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just this guy named John. Is ultimately I feel and I grieve, and it's not based on my position, I have features that have made me, throughout my life, I've just been kind of placated because I'm been called man pretty, I've been called fuckboy, I've been called all sorts of things. They just kind of go and
I'm getting tired of people being judged based off of things they can't control about their appearance, and
right.
You can't control a race you come out as.
Right.
You can't control this or that.
Right.
Like, this is just, we're being racist and petty about stupid shit.
Right. And the point of it is, though, is, this idea that if we go and give, representation and, all this kind of whatever, it's somehow going to combat it. And it's like, no, all you do is actually reinforce the idea that these differences make us not actually equal. And that's this whole idea where they don't even want the idea of equality anymore. They call it equity now, because this is all a misandrist plot to overtake and to, extract revenge. That's why you see the common thread in all these female would-be heroes, is they can't be heroes because they're so focused on their inner turmoil, their tempest within them, that they can't actually be heroic enough to just let men be men and leave it at that and be cool with lesbian men. No, we have to be brought up, we have to be, bettered, we have to learn, we have to be changed, and all this kind of stuff has like a steeped in kind of conceit to it that no matter what you do, you're wrong. And it's like, when you come from that point, and that's the whole thing about Disney as a narrative structuring group now, and the what I've been talking about, that's been there since the 90s, that idea that there's something wrong with men, and it's like, it's not there's anything wrong with men or women. What is misbalanced is the conceit that we have to give corporations way too much power, and the ability to undo people's ability to actually just have lives that pertain to their own livelihood.
That's one thing I'll give this movie, is they didn't dig that much on racial things, even though it was a woman predominant movie. They didn't, or not racial, gender things.
Well, they didn't do Wakanda Forever all that much, because once again, this was more though about just kind of, this wasn't in your face girl power, because it was just it was so everywhere. There was, it's like, yeah. And any man that was in there was, the divorced guy was also, his ex-wife is Victoria, or I can't say her, Elaine. Elaine from Seinfeld was, his girl boss ex-wife.
Yeah.
Who, basically still could cuck him in the moment, and she was gonna, say, we're gonna go to your house, and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And she just kind of, directed him around, and so, nobody there, there's no man in the movie that actually, stands tall for anything, really, other than M'Baku, barely. And that's only because Shuri wants to go off and live her life and not, be burdened.
Oh, he's going to be the active king.
Right. But he's only going to be the king pro temp, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's going to be a certain boy in 10 years who will come back and take his throne.
Right.
And repeat the Killmonger storyline.
Right. Only this time,
just maybe in the opposite direction.
Right. He'll be a good prodigal son rather than a bad prodigal son. This is the good bastard. But hey, at least heroes are allowed to have boys again in Disney, I guess. Hulk just had a son.
Yeah, I mean, we got T'Challa, son of T'Challa.
Right, but but then again, it's both of these are boys too that have been around for a number of years. Scar looks like he's at least in his teens, possible 20s. I don't know. He's got a really terrible haircut.
Yeah, he doesn't look anything like he should in the comic books.
No,
and seeing his concept, you're like, why didn't you go with the concept art?
Because that would have been too kind to men. And once again, this is about misandry, right? Like, these women that decry feminism as an act of equality are deluding themselves, and the whole idea of what women, women are not men. Men are not women. Like, there's certain things women do that, I'm astounded by, and it's kind of like, oh, it's great and all. But, it's like, I'm not going to sit here and, fret over, it's because I'm a man. There's just some stuff that's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, this idea of, having it all, and, the best way to be a feminist in modern times is just basically to become a 1980s frat boy is conceit that
doesn't
being
make
a woman...
sense.
No, it doesn't, because it completely undermines the whole idea of what,
so everybody's experience is their
being
own.
A woman even is.
And, gender experience, so... this is going to be very based of me, but every man has their... men have their own experience, unique to men. Women have experiences unique to women. And trans men and women have experiences unique to them.
Yeah.
Like, everybody has a unique situation. Why do we have to make everybody the same? That doesn't make people unique.
No, but also by the same token, trying to... demand that everybody be treated the same because they're going out of their way specifically to underline their difference, that it's a conceit within yourself. Like, if you are I don't know, this gets into an even that's too much of an issue, I think, to get into this part
to get into. Yeah,
because that's I mean, whatever somebody wants to do at the age of consent with their own whatever, they can choose to do, but they cannot mandate me to, go along with their choices and now have to, do all this stuff because of the way they choose to live. That's the way you choose to live. If I'm not for it or for it, it don't fucking matter. Like, if I'm your biggest fucking ally, doesn't matter. If I'm your biggest, what you think is threat or whatever, doesn't really fucking matter. Because that's the idea of freedom and liberty. And if you...
I'm just some dude, and I'm going to stay that. That's my unique experience.
Right. And all I'm going to say is, because I'm not going to tell you how I feel about it. I'm sure a lot of people are interpreting it because I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I've got, pronouns in my bio or whatever and all this and that. No, it's I don't want to go through all the hassle of trying to virtue signal everybody what I give a shit about and don't.
I don't think
I'm not going
we
to.
have to if it's obvious. Unless you need to.
Well, if you feel that you have to do those things, that's the indictment of your own...
That's you. That's your choice.
Right, but that's one of those things of you're not being able to see through your own racist behavior, right? Like this whole idea of oh, we're going to do identity politics, ESG, we're going to do all this. That's you actively admitting to the conceit in your heart that without some kind of policy in place, you couldn't earn these things. Now, I know that current idea of meritocracy is getting turned into moneytocracy because everything is becoming this weird corporatist fucking bullshit. But that's how that happens, though, is because it just becomes a pay your way, and if you can pay your way, then you're good enough to be anything that you choose to be. But if you're just trying to, just live in a world where you could just live, have your own thoughts and feelings about things, and, understand that sometimes you're going to be an asshole to some people, and some people are going to love you forever, And sometimes, you'll just get, some days where sometimes, somebody's a little bit off, but you don't just go and completely throw them away because, they don't meet every little standard that you have about them. If people have to be that perfect to be in your orbit, especially if
that's
they're
problem.
Right, especially if they're people that you've known for a long period of time. Now, if you've gone, say, 10, 15 years, don't really talk to somebody, then one day you have, this conversation, it goes in a really weird place, and you're like, I can't talk to you anymore, fuck off. Fine, cool, passage of time, happens. People reveal themselves in weird, interesting ways. I've done it, I've been guilty of it. Probably be better to kind of, just...
Oh, people change over passages of time,
Right,
too.
Right. But probably be better to do what I ultimately decided to do when I started seeing that behavior in myself, and I was just like, you know what? I need to leave Facebook. Because I'm letting this stuff get in the way of me actually being able to appreciate people for being different and just as valuable as I am, because I'm sitting here and like, trying to like say that, any kind of ideal that I may have about anything is more valid than your ideal. That's not what America is. And we would all do well to remember that, like, but that's not what a lot of this entertainment is, and that's why the name of this channel is what it is. Because this is about the message and how like there's more going on with what you see, than you would ever be allowed to really comprehend if they had their way. And if they can keep you in this, protected little bubble where everything's safe and they can give you all the answers and tell you, just have a 401k and get vaccinated and do all the things, If you ascribe to that, if you keep the status quo, you are actively being more tokenized more and more with everything in every way and every day in America currently. It used to be that when you would buy something, you would look for all these features that you couldn't get anywhere else, right? And now everything's just kind of owning up to the idea that it's like, nah, service plans is where it's at. I don't want to promise you anything that you can actually take with you and that you could ultimately benefit from. I need you to constantly be, validating me. And that's kind of like the whole idea of like a lot of this weird modernist kind of misdirect that we've got going on. Is a lot of it has to do with this whole idea of, I need you to, I need the focus to be here because it's like I can't just ever try to earn something, or spend time with the thing. It just like has to be now, and because I mean that would have been the appropriate response to what happened with Chadwick Boseman ultimately. And that's the thing I can really just say about the movies. Like I wish they would have showed him some respect. By if you're not going to keep the character alive, at least keep him in camera for when that stuff happens. Show, don't tell. Don't sit here and, just completely dismiss my part in the audience, and tell me that, this thing is just a mantle and it can just be handed off so easily, and maybe with Black Panther, that one might be a little bit more permissible than other things because it has been a mantle even within their own continuity, because the Black Panther is somebody who comes from, it's part of being the king and all that kind of whatnot.
Generational, yeah.
But they've already decided that that's not how Black Panther works now. Black Panther is just a code name, for as much as code names matter. In these, like, she put on her mask, she had on her mask, and she immediately removed the mask. So, like, the whole point of putting on the mask was so that she could run around in a jumpsuit, even though she'd already been running around in jumpsuits. So, I don't know. If you go seeing this movie, just go in knowing that you're not going to see something that really has respect for the character of Chadwick Boseman as an actor, or Chakala as, the character within the actual narrative. They kind of, just tease you on both ends for either, and don't really service, I think, in a good way either. But, like I said, I think that's the reason why they at least had the, I guess, restraint to not have another after credit scene when the mid credit scene was really just an extension of the scene that was just preceding it, which was Shuri just finally dealing with her brother dying and burning his bed sheet or his death sheet or something.
Yeah.
So now there's a naked Chakala somewhere in a cave, probably. Maybe.
She's burning her funeral garb.
Oh, it's not okay. That because like I thought she's like, where did you get these? I thought she was referring. So maybe so that was one thing I misunderstood in the movie. So thank you for clearing that up. The things that they were wearing at the funeral. So now the question is,
yes,
was that for Chakala's funeral or her mom's funeral then?
I think it was a mixture.
Or whether it's the same garb, like you wear, like, but
I think she didn't have it burnt off. She didn't burn him.
Right. But you get what I'm saying,
For
though.
her
It's
mom's,
like, wouldn't you have
for her brother?
Wouldn't you have to get new garb for every single person in your life that dies, though? Because you have to burn those garbs.
Most likely,
grief.
probably.
I mean, so is she still grieving her mom, or do you not see that? Like, that's what I'm saying, is like this whole thing kind of like, even Choctaw's death becomes just another thing in the movie. It's another detail because mom dies too, and so they revisit everything that they just did right at the beginning. When you're finally kind of like, all right, well, we're having a story now, and then we go right back to like, oh, we're in the funeral again. So I don't know. It's, if you go and see it, like I say,
it's pacing like I said. It's paced like a TV show.
It is not terrible in the way that Thor is, but it is not functional as the movie that it should have been, or could have been, or would have been, had they actually cared about the things that they've pointed at. But pointing at something is not actually dealing with it. It's just pointing it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all that they really do with a lot of things. Is like the bad writing in She-Hulk, they literally used as a crutch for their finale.
And saying it was purposeful.
And saying that the bad writing, you couldn't hold the bad writing against us because the bad writing was our bad guy. And
yeah. Because they really didn't have a villain in the show.
Oh, they did. The writer's room. It was Jessica Gal. Like, the gal who sat there and, basically said that, she caused herself to be a problem to Kevin Feige as much as she possibly could because, she's owed something. And as a guy who, has kind of been there in the past and had to do things here and there in my life, like, I've certainly taken elements of myself into jobs before, but I have always made it a point to actually at least stick around, do the job that needs to be done, and have the job be about the job as much as possible, but Disney's job, though, is to entertain, not to try to subvert entertainment into lifestyle branding. And once they get into the idea that all they're really trying to do is make more money off of you, like, that's the problem with profiteers and fascist, feudalist, technocrat overlords that want to, take over every little aspect of who you are and nickel and dime everything. Money is a construct of our own, allowance. And because we allow that construct to be used in such a negative, weaponistic way, it is being specifically exploited by people who would want to be able to not have to deal with problems that they otherwise couldn't handle without that money, right? And so where the survival of the fittest is a natural kind of approach to the universe, that is the norm of the universe, the conceit of too much profiteering is that the weakest become the strong because they steal away everyone's strength. And that's kind of like Emperor Palpatine and all this kind of stuff, like why you don't want to become something that's too large and too unsustainable, because you become unnatural and a threat to yourself and to reality, because it's just money not being real, and the constant pursuit of it has put us into this weird kind of inflationary cycle where everything has to go up 1% every year regardless, and that's just the grade they put everything on, and so, and I'm just kind of saying this is a way to kind of summarize where we're going with this as a channel and a series and what it's all about, is that we need to start creating more parallel aspects to the economy where we're taking back our entertainment, owning, did we go and do that thing? Yes. But the only reason I went and watched that movie was so that I could sit here and have this conversation actually come from a point of, well, no, I went and I did the thing, so let me talk about it. Because I don't even necessarily think that I needed to go watch it to have the feelings I have about it. It was all just everything that I saw was a confirmation about everything that I had heard, right? And even what I heard was kind of coming from somebody who's kind of like, oh, I'm going to kind of tell you what I can remember the best way that I can remember it, because if I, and that's the thing about this, is like, if you don't focus on any of it, it's all right if you just leave it at a level, right? And so, like, when we're sitting here saying, like, we shouldn't get too, introspective on who people are and try to, dig them apart and, like, allow them their privacy, we should do that for people, not necessarily for movies and corporations, mm-hmm. right? Like, if I want to sit here and tear apart a movie, that's fine, right? I'm not necessarily tearing apart any of the actors that were in it, and even if I did, it would only be in the sense of, like, what was their acting ability or this or that, where they falter in terms of the character, how were they miscast, so on and so forth. But these were good actors. They were able to talk in a way that was, it was so unnecessary and not about the thing that would have been actually entertaining and telling a story within the framework of telling stories. But that's not what the MCU is for. That's not what Star Wars is for. It's not what any of these things are for. That's not what Rings of Power was for, and that's owned by Amazon. That's not what, like I say, all these propagandist networks want to keep you in the network, and they want to make sure that they get their monthly stipend so they can keep the money rolling in, so they can keep, the idea of too big to fail. If they're too big to fail, we're too insignificant to succeed. And if we all just sit here and look for everything to be perfectly brand label accessible, and like I only take things that like are on this, like some things, we all have to learn to take a chance. Like anybody who's listening to this is our first broadcast that other than like the thing that fucked up, but this is our first long-term broadcast of any note. And so anybody who's going to watch this...
That's not about wrestling or anything.
Right. So anybody who's going to watch this, but nobody knows the connection to that really right now, other than like, I'm sure you'll tell your friends this and that, right? But point being, though, is anybody who's going to give this a chance is, appreciated. Because what we're trying to do here is actually give you an hour and a half of your time that at least kind of respects it for spending it with us. And I hope that we've at least kind of talked about some things here about what's going on with this that will at least kind of be things to keep in mind. If you do choose to go see it, I can't stop you. But it wasn't necessary. It doesn't have a connection to what has really gone on in the MCU. It was just kind of there. It exists. For the money it costs to go see it, it's not worth it. But if it were something that, but I think that, like I say, we gotta start not allowing ourselves to be subscribed into these programs and giving them, they basically turn into ostensibly welfare queens that are functioning off the idea that every month, even $8 a month, if you have 1 million subscribers, $8 a month is $8 million every,
mm-hmm.
Like that's 8 million every month. Carry that through, an entire year. It's 12 months. That's 96 million right there. Like that. So if you be able to do that for a decade, that's $1 billion. Like, and that's what all this stuff comes down to. They try to figure out, well, where can we cut corners? Where can we do this and where can we do that? And Rings of Power was a terrible movie but a terrible series that got way too much money spent on it, but still didn't have enough money spent in the right places because they didn't hire anybody who actually knew how to make legitimate armor. So they went and they just got printed armor and things like that. Like, if you're not that invested in the thing that you're making to actually invest in it fully and do it to a degree to which people can at least say I know that this thing that people are watching right now, you could sit here and say, oh, well, you could do this, you could do that, and like you can grow and you can build. Yeah, and we will. This is rudimentary stuff because this is a channel that I literally finalized just getting everything put together 10 minutes before we start broadcasting. So this is, green, naive, territory of me just trying to live by the principle that I want my entertainment to be a little bit more fundamentally mine. And anybody who wants to appreciate that with me, awesome, great, but I also want to allow other people to just find their own thing, and I know that this isn't going to cater to every person, and that's fine. We all, appreciate the people that you can bring in. Don't necessarily try to throw people out, but like if you're the one who's joining into a thing, don't sit here and try to make it about your things necessarily instead. Because that's where you end up with the problem of all these Mary Sues and the He-Man Woman Haters Club, no girls allowed, because the girls show up and they're like, oh, well, we just need to change these rules about the game and blah, 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 blah. Like video games. Think about how much video games have changed in recent years.
Yeah.
To the point that now, like, the term gamer words exists as basically for all the people who have their pronouns, my pronouns are gamer words, which is another channel that I have on YouTube, and I should probably actually get made here. We'll get done broadcasting with this just so I have it all set up. But yeah, I mean, things change, as time goes, and the reliance on these corporations that we should have to be stuck in their shadow and deal with everything that they do to, just kind of throw it in our face that they have power and we don't. There's a reason why I'm leaving a lot of these properties kind of behind and just seeking out new things or just taking time into my own hands and doing stuff with it. Because I don't want to be a token. I don't want you to be tokens to me either. Like, if anybody wants to, show me appreciation or gratitude by, the time that they've spent being hopefully weekly entertained, to the point of the name of the channel, I greatly appreciate that, and I will do what I can to, provide you honest, legitimate perspective, as time goes by, and just try to be honest with you about kind of what I see these things from my perspective on it. I worked in a video store for a great number of years. I went to art school, so I know a lot of the people who actually work, in various areas of entertainment right now. I left the game industry behind because I didn't want to get caught up in all the service model insanity. I wrote about it when I was in college, about where a lot of this stuff were going, and and I even called out how a viral kind of pandemic mindset might allow for the gatekeeping to take place that would allow for a structure to come in to view to where no one could really even be themselves anymore, and it become and then at the time people told me that I was pretty outlandish for such a fictional concept, and it was a good thing that I was planning on going into science fiction writing and all this kind of stuff because I had a mind for it. But I don't think there's really one thing that I ever wrote about in college that hasn't already taken place other than the full extreme breadth of Haven's Fall, but that's like 500 years from now, and everything that goes into it we still have time to collect to, but it was all built on the concept of existing technology, and now we're kind of like getting out into the woods, but like I say, this is the outro of where we're going with these things, and what this is all about. Our entertainment isn't necessarily our entertainment for our entertainment's sake, and that's the problem. If we can entertain people just for the purpose of entertaining again, sometimes even just going into the absurd, it used to be the best way to go about doing. Like, that's why fart jokes existed for such tropey long ass time in movies and things like that, because they're not about anything other than just a quick immediate laugh, and they don't have to be, if you can't laugh about a fart, everybody's got an asshole. It's kind of like, like our one bit of common ground. Everybody out there, like, you got shit inside you, like, seeps out from time to time. It stinks. We are all full of stinky hot air, and when we are able to kind of like release that from time to time, it's a good thing. You know, it's important to like get the shit out. And if you try to live in a overly homogenized, sterilized world where everything has to be within the acceptable realms of terms of service agreements and this and that, you end up losing a lot of your freedoms via proxy. And it's all because you went along with these stupid service models that were totally there in place to legalistically sidestep, you know, things that have been clearly marked out as actually your rights, your privileges, your obligations. And those aren't things to be pissed off about. You know, all these people who seek to limit other people's rights only to destroy their own in the same process. On all sides of the political spectrum, would all do well to just step back away from their ideology and like all their conceit and duplicitous kind of favoritism, because, you know, unfortunately a lot of Republicans and Democrats fall into the same hole of stumbling down the idea of it's that other guy who, you know, has all the problems and creates.
They all want the same thing because the other guy,
right,
is evil.
Right, or if they just learn to just do it this way, it's like, no, both sides can be corrupt, and both sides can just be out for like the wrong ends, because ultimately, like, you know, this is supposed to be a nation of strong individuals, not strong corporations. Like, corporations are kind of the antithesis of what we want it to end up with. You know, like, that's why we destroyed monopolies back in the 19th century. It used to be a thing that we were good at. Like, we used to be able to identify a robber baron. Now the robber barons own all the networks of propaganda. And that can be, you know, so many different forms of media. Like, we ourselves right now are on a propagandist network. And I'm going to go and broadcast it, upload this to other propagandist network. You know? And Rumble. You know, which in and of itself is like, you know, a response to the other propagandist networks that exist, and in and of itself will show in due course, in due time, what it's really about, you know. But all these things, you know, like they all are connected somehow, and it's usually in the back room dealings of some lobbyist plot.
The back rooms.
Exactly, right. To ensure that, like, you know, the powers that be are the powers that be for as long as they can be. But at this point in time, though, you know, this thing's gone on for a little over an hour and a half. And, you know, I again, do thank anybody who took the time to actually talk with us about this and kind of talk through it. But I don't want to try to rival the movie in terms of its length when, you know, it just, ultimately, it exists. I think it costs too much to go and see in the theater. But if somebody is willing to take your, you know, take you there on their dime,
especially if they don't live where we live,
whatever, yeah, like, if you don't have to, like, go,
because it was $6 a person for us.
Right. $6 a person is a little bit more manageable, but even that's just kind of like, ugh, for that movie, I don't know, you know. I mean, I'm glad we didn't pay more than 10. Jesus, I can't imagine paying $10.
Even a full price, though, it would have been 10.
Right,
I wouldn't even been 10.
Right. But that's
10 is 3D for us.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, though. Is like, you know, like, but you turned me, though. I was just like, I don't want to pay for 3D. I'm not going to do that. Just, you know, just go watch the thing. Like, it's like, because that's where I'm at with this stuff. It's like, I don't want to be more invested in this movie than the people who put it together are. And that's the problem.
And 3D
like,
is just gimmicky.
All these Disney stands are more invested in the thing that they're invested in than the actual fans that they stole it away from. And, like, even, you know, like they're fans of Disney. They're fans of being Disney fans too, not the actual things that Disney even does.
Oh God, I've been reading Tinder bios recently because I'm on Tinder,
right?
And a lot of people are like a bit like anything Disney, mm-hmm. And I'm like, I know this bitch owns an iPhone and all that shit too. Like,
yeah, and it's
crap. And then she's a hardcore like socialist.
Obviously,
and she fucking loves Disney, and I've seen more than one women like this.
Right, Disney princess. You know, there's a reason why I call it, why I say that to, you know, my Zoomer niece. She's a Disney princess. That's exactly what a Disney princess is.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Disney princess do not want equality. They want the world. They want to like you heard Shuri. She was telling you she's a Disney princess. She is a Disney princess.
Watch the world burn.
Yeah, she wants to watch the world burn. Like that's where like, and it's like, yeah, you know what? So do men right now too. But you know what? Like there's this whole other thing there called life that you kind of have to try to balance shit. You know, like there's a version of me that just could like, yeah, I could just go out and wreck shit. At what cost? You know. Like, and me just trying to hold it together, I even will get told that I'm a problematic white guy who, like, did all this stuff. And it's like, did I really do that? Or is that shit that just kind of happened around me and I had to deal with it happening to the best of my ability? Admittedly, as somebody who's not, like, looking to be too ambitious or anything like that, you know? Which pisses people off as well, because they'll say, oh, you got all this talent, skill, and it's like, yeah, well, what if I want it to be mine? I don't want to just go, you know, like... And anything that I put it into is what I want to put it into, you know. And if I don't feel the thing coming from it that needs to be there, and I'm not going to waste too many people's time or my own, you know. And that's kind of where Disney's starting to come up with Star Wars, as it's now just kind of on the back burner. And that's going to be the MCU here soon enough, because I mean that's the whole thing about this movie. I just don't even feel really anything about it. I don't feel like it was good or bad. It was there. We went, and it was over. Disney tried to play with my emotions, but Chadwick Boseman was not a guy that I know personally, and so like he died a couple years ago, and to like, you know, have that brought up again now, in a way that just completely, it was just kind of like, ooh, gross. Why do we have to do this like right before the credits roll? Like, are you trying to, like, you know, just throw up a smoke screen so I think about that rather than what just happened in the movie? And I think that's actually, yes. They put a schmaltzy Hallmark card there at the end. And at the beginning, kind of. Although at the beginning they poochied it, quite literally. Like, send him off to his own planet. And he, like, when his casket just, like, you know, ascended out.
T'Challa ain't dead. He's just going back home.
Right. It's just...
Fucking Men in Black reference there.
God damn,
Elvis ain't dead. He just going back home.
Right, I couldn't even stop. Like, I mean, like, it was not the effect they were going for, but I laughed audibly within the first few moments of it, because it was just like, what are you doing? You know, like, you're literally like just vacuuming his fucking like casketed corpse up, and like so his dead body's inside that casket. Like, is he strapped in, or is he just kind of like? Anyways, we're
loosely flopping around.
Right. As we're rolling our own credits here, you know, I mean, we could go into real ludicrousville for a few minutes, just to, you know, if you're here, if you want to. Otherwise, we can also just cut this off, because I mean, it and that's the thing. Is
I mean, there might be stuff you cut out for YouTube, but I mean, Rumble will definitely get everything.
Very true. I mean, because, like, that's the whole thing. It's like I said, in my attempts to kind of make sense of this thing, I went to an AI artist program, and, like I say, the capstone's in the corner. Like, I have probably about 20 different images, and they also comprise the web banner and things like that for the channel right now on YouTube and on here also. Because, like, it to me seemed like I was like, well, I could go and I put time and effort into this, do all my own artwork and everything. But I was like, why are you going to do that, John? Disney doesn't care about this. Why are you going to put more time and effort into a thing that's going to be about reviewing this thing than they really, you know, would do themselves? So I went and I had a robot do it, right? And I'm just going to be upfront about that. Like, some of the artwork that you see on here, like those images, like, you know, that I didn't do the artwork. That's CGI assisted, like, you know, like, but I decided I was at least the director of what I said was allowable, and like because AI is not really intelligence, it's just arrays. Array information is really what AI stands for, not artificial intelligence. Array information, like it's a spreadsheet, and you get a cell, and you can even, like, you know, like, calculate things, because it's a spreadsheet. That's what spreadsheets do. They calculate things. They're elaborate calculators, right? And so, like, you know, like, that's like a lot of these things that people are dealing with nowadays. You know, like, they act like, ooh, a lot of things are very easily just about pushing elaborate buttons and having a thing happen because you did a thing and this and that. And you know, when you get into how all these things works, that's you can get into the weeds on these things too. But the point being, basically, with as ludicrous as this got, I wanted to at least be upfront. Yeah, I didn't get the art. I didn't do the artwork myself. I went and I just kind of like kept clicking a next button, and I would choose what I thought was interesting and humorous because. And even though it is kind of a sick, ludicrous kind of thing, which I'm not, it was part of the reason why I didn't even have all the artwork here, because I have this one image that actually looks like Chadwick Boseman, in a comic book style, and it actually is not. But I didn't want to really try to death mask him either, as much as I'm sitting here complaining about Disney doing it. That's because this isn't about Chadwick Boseman. This is about Disney, kind of like what they did to Chadwick Boseman, right? And kind of how they avoided him, how they didn't actually pay him proper respect, or the character, and the character's who they own, right? But they tried to pwn Chadwick Boseman because he didn't and so
inform them.
Right. And so when I sit here and I think to myself about if you're gonna dance him about a gesticulating zombie puppet, I'd almost actually rather just see you do that in a movie. Just be ludicrous and straightforward and upfront. If you're gonna make this a zombie property, then actually do a story about zombie Chikala, and that would have been more. And that's kind of the thing, just a book in.
It's back to what I said about the Spider-Man thing
and
they didn't reference really anything else outside of Ironheart in this.
No, and Ironheart is just kind of she's there. She's there. I don't think I'm not impressed by her. I don't think she's, I don't think that you can just go.
It was just introduce her.
I understand, but I'm just saying, the derivative of Tony Stark in and of itself is kind of the thing that I have more of an issue with. But I mean, the actress was fine, but Ironheart as a character is kind of an indictment of the MCU in and of itself. We got to kill these men off and turn them into mantles and just hand it to a woman and all. And it's more of that misandrist kind of insanity that just kind of gets into all these things. But with that said, unless there's any other kind of absurd ideas you have on it, or any other thoughts, I think, because I mean, like I say, I don't hate. It's unfortunate. I hope that. I don't know. At this point in time, I don't want. It's unfortunate that Disney owns Marvel, and is so against the concept of what the MCU was supposed to be. And we were lucky.
The same way about Star Wars.
Yeah, and we were lucky.
And we're more than likely going to get Star Wars bought back by George Lucas than we are Marvel bought back by the Stanley family.
Right. And that's only because, Star Wars has been so devalued that I think that George Lucas might just kind of be like, can I, try to fix this thing that you took from me, and just so I can get it out of your hand? But I don't even...
He's already kind of been slightly... He was employed for a second to fix the original the new trilogy.
So they say, but they hired him just to take his
none of the
ideas
actors wanted to come back.
Right. But and that's the thing. It's a lot of this stuff too. Rights issues and and just certainly as you say, they burn people out. James Gunn has effectively, he's like, you got my movies, I'm out, I'm done, I'm not doing anything else. You got my, you got them in the can, good.
You got the two left.
And that's it, yeah.
And he was done with them before he even
yeah,
became the director of DC.
Yeah, he was already headed to DC. This was just he just got a raise basically to ensure that they know.
Yeah, he's another. Yeah,
he's like no, I'm not just doing some movies over there, guys. Fuck you is what I'm doing.
I'm in control of DC.
Fuck you is what I'm doing. Quite literally.
And I'm excited to see what he does with DC because
it certainly can't be any worse than anything that's happened before. And knowing kind of how he kind of rebounded a little bit for what, but. That is to say, though, I don't want everything to become the Guardians of the Galaxy again. And I know that wasn't him. I know that was Disney responding to his success with that movie. and then they ruined. And that's kind of like a weird thing about the Guardians of the Galaxy is as time goes by, I kind of hate it more and more for like because it becomes so not worthwhile. It's I just it is everything now. Every movie has been a lesser...
But he's not just the director of Guardians. He's worked with Warner Brothers for a long time.
Right.
He did the Scooby-Doo movies,
but I'm just
which are cult classics.
Right, but I'm just kind of speaking to the issue to what is like Disney. Part of the problem with Disney is every movie at Disney now is just kind of like it's the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well,
which makes Guardians.
Yeah,
of the
that's
Galaxy
true.
Worthless.
Even though as Guardians of the Galaxy would have been better than the Thor movie that happened.
Sure.
But they took that away from the gun too.
Right. But that's the thing too. It's like all these things that they would have, should have, could have done better, but that's the ultimate takeaway from this thing is there was a better movie that happened off screen, and what you get is a 2-hour Mask and Gill commercial with a 30-minute, extravaganza CGI porn, and a little bit of emotional manipulation thrown in.
Blackmail?
Yeah. So that's it. Thanks again. We are now, 10 minutes away from 2 hours. So definitely, this is a movie in itself. So thank you for your time. And y'all have a fun-filled remainder of whatever your night brings. But from here on, I think we are good to go. And we'll see you again with some other insanity soon.
Bye, guys.